Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Persia's last emperor, was a key figure in world politics in the second half of the 20th century.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're discussing the most significant world events that either came to fruition or were set in motion following the demise of a specific figure.
It's very easy to look at Alexander's conquests and see him as a sort of fly-by-night military megalomaniac.
The Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. It's not entirely accurate to label the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand as the only catalyst for World War I.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Today, he will be assassinated. This is the spark which will ignite the First World War.
That said, it is perhaps satisfactory to describe it as the proverbial tinder and flint which helped light the fire, tipping political tensions over the edge. The Archduke of Austria and his wife were shot in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb student. The assassination followed a failed bombing attempt on Ferdinand's motorcade.
At the last moment, the Archduke sees the bomb coming and raises his arm to protect his beloved wife. The driver accelerates, and the grenade bounces off the back of the car.
Princip didn't act alone. He was part of the separatist group Young Bosnia, which received support in their actions from the Serbian secret organization Black Hand. World War I certainly loomed large at the time of Ferdinand's death, but this event effectively codified its inevitability.
Just 6 weeks after a man was killed by a single bullet, the alliances were triggered. Germany invaded France, and the First World War had begun.
Abraham Lincoln. We're all taught in school about how actor John Wilkes Booth assassinated President Abraham Lincoln during a play at Ford's Theater.
For Lincoln, finally, this punishing war has come to an end. And he's able to feel a sense of the country is going to go forward. I've done my part as a leader. And he only has 5 days to appreciate that before he's killed.
What's also interesting are the consequences that followed, specifically during the subsequent presidency of Andrew Johnson. The former vice president failed to deliver upon Lincoln's plans for a post-war reconstruction of the South due to his desire to assist wealthy white Southern conservatives.
Johnson implements a plan of reconstruction which puts control of the Southern states back into the hands of the white population.
Johnson's undeniable racism ultimately led to a Reconstruction era that was plagued by carpetbagging Northern opportunists and an overarching sense of failure. His relentless conflict with Congress led to him becoming the first American president to be impeached and paved the way for increased congressional influence in American politics.
Finally, the bad blood spilled over. The president was impeached and escaped removal from office by just one vote.
Julius Caesar. The history of Rome dates back to antiquity, with the establishment of the Roman kingdom circa 753 BC.
I'm the most powerful man Rome has ever seen. It's time to make it official.
Long-serving senators might not take well to it. Even Sulla was careful with them, not to make them feel disrespected.
I'll do nothing. They owe me their lives.
The death of Julius Caesar, meanwhile, would signify the onset of a chaotic civil war, the demise of Rome's republic, and the rise of an empire. March 15th, a date popularly known as the Ides of March, memorializes Caesar's assassination by Roman senators.
Once the deed was done, the conspirators turned out to have no forward plan. What they got was civil war, which ended up producing one-man rule, emperors.
It was the culmination of a grand and infamous conspiracy involving over 50 of Rome's public servants, including Caesar's close compatriot Marcus Junius Brutus. Brutus's reputation is now divisive. While some vilify him as one of history's greatest traitors, others regard his actions as heroic and a courageous stand against Caesar's lack of political accountability.
So Caesar's assassination only served to strengthen the very thing it meant to destroy.
Saddam Hussein. The Iran-Iraq War was fought in part to prevent Iran's post-revolution influence from seeping into Iraqi President Saddam Hussein's Ba'athist Sunni government.
Along with the United States, much of the Arab world sided with Iraq in a war that had no winner.
Throughout this bloody conflict, Saddam remained in power, with his war efforts being silently backed by the United States. However, his invasion of Kuwait in 1990 led to a direct confrontation with the American military during the Gulf War.
The Kuwait invasion was to sow the seeds of Saddam's downfall, as powerful allies deserted him. In January 1991, American-led forces launched a massive assault on Iraqi troops occupying Kuwait.
Following 9/11, American pressure on Saddam increased, leading to the invasion of Iraq and the downfall of his regime. He was later convicted of crimes against humanity and executed in 2006.
The verdict was predictable. Saddam was found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging.
This event ultimately opened the doors for the aforementioned Iranian influence and theocratic philosophies to permeate not only Iraq, but also large sections of the Middle East. Mahatma Gandhi. The aftermath of Mahatma Gandhi's assassination was one of grim irony, sharply contrasting with his message of nonviolence. On January 30th, 1948, Gandhi was assassinated by one Nathuram Godse while on his way to a prayer meeting.
He took 3 steps, bowed before Mahatma Gandhi, and he shot him point blank, 3 bullets.
Godse was a Hindu nationalist who objected to Gandhi's compassionate stance towards displaced Muslim nationalists in the aftermath of British colonialism in India. After Gandhi's death, public displays of mourning unfolded, which were juxtaposed against violent riots in areas such as Mumbai.
Despite his efforts, violence between Hindus and Muslims continued, and despite his efforts, India was fractured in two.
Gandhi's demise would forever raise questions as to what routes modern-day Pakistan would have taken had his peaceful ethos been allowed to continue, as India navigated the political landscape post-British Raj. Alexander the Great. It's difficult to know exactly how vast Alexander the Great's empire would have become if he hadn't succumbed to fever and disease at only 32 years of age.
He contracted a fever, possibly malaria, and on the 10th of June, 323 BC, after a night of heavy drinking, Alexander died. He was a month short of his 33rd birthday.
What is known, however, is that Alexander's lack of foresight with regards to his line of succession resulted in chaos, civil war, and turmoil. Today, our geographical concept of East versus West is largely attributed to the fracturing of Alexander's empire, which stretched to roughly 2 million square miles.
His conquests had opened the East to a flood of Western and Greek influence, and the contact between cultures was to have a lasting effect on European and Asian civilization.
Nonetheless, Alexander's demise ultimately proved that his control over this empire was tenuous at best. It didn't take long for rebellions to break out over the command of this collapsing house of cards.
After his death, that legend became an inspiration to many who dreamed, but ultimately failed to follow where he had led.
Moctezuma II. The days of the Aztec Empire were effectively numbered after the death of Moctezuma II on June 30th, 1520.
Over the course of 2 years, a single ruthless man was able to forge an alliance which destroyed the gorgeous city, rooted out its ancient religion, and created a new realm for his king.
The manner of the Aztec emperor's death has been disputed, with most agreeing that he was stoned to death by his own people following a failed negotiation with the invading Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés.
Perhaps even before Moctezuma was able to get a word out, stones, arrows, and darts began to fly at him.
Still, others believe that it was Cortés himself who did the job. While that remains up in the air, what is certain is that the conquistadors narrowly escaped Aztec land with their lives, and then came back for vengeance. Cortés's war of attrition decimated the city of Tenochtitlan, setting the stage for further European colonial efforts in the New World.
The situation that existed in the final siege of Tenochtitlan was very different. And surely the Aztecs who were fighting must have realized that. They must have seen that it signaled the end of their empire.
Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. It's entirely possible that the cultural landscape of modern-day Iran might look drastically different had the Iranian Revolution not taken place back in 1979.
Daily, it has become more difficult to look at the scope of opposition to the Shah of Iran and still see his monarchy surviving. The Ayatollahs are committed to the ouster of the Shah and nothing less than that.
The Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, espoused a political ideology known as the Great Civilization, where Iran would emerge as a global superpower with idealized socio-economic conditions for its people.
I think that our country in the next 10 years will be what you are today. In the next 25 years, according to other people, I'm not saying that, will be among the 5 most prosperous countries of the world.
His reign was also notable for how Iranian culture largely echoed Western fashion and music trends, rather than enforced Islamic fundamentalism. Following the revolution, Pahlavi was forced into exile, and Iran's cultural trajectory shifted towards a clerical theocracy under the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini.
During his 10-year reign, he implemented his ideas of an Islamic revolution with uncompromising vigor. and turned Iran into a theocracy.
The Shah, meanwhile, died in exile on July 27, 1980. Vladimir Lenin. Few figures from the former Soviet Union's socio-political sphere are as polarizing and controversial as Vladimir Lenin. The life of this former Soviet head of state saw his administration rise to power via the October Revolution of 1917, deposing Russian Tsar Nicholas II. This armed coup allowed for Leninist communist politics to shape the Soviet Union's political course for decades. Yet it was Lenin's death in 1924 that created an opportunity for change, a vacuum that would allow the dictatorship of Joseph Stalin to emerge. Some historians argue that both Lenin and Stalin were dictators, albeit in different ways. Regardless, Russia's legacy of political turbulence was further inflamed after Lenin's death. Before we unveil our top pick, here are some honorable mentions. Martin Luther King Jr. His dream lives on, but the fight for social justice never ends.
He was an American martyr. A man who broke through the barriers of segregation with the philosophy of nonviolence.
Ngo Dinh Diem. His death via a CIA-backed coup led to more American troops in Vietnam.
Diem came to power in 1955. His country had been split in two a year earlier, and with a multi-billion-dollar U.S. aid program, Diem built a powerful army as a bulwark against the communist guerrillas in the north.
Yitzhak Rabin. His assassination placed more distance between Israel, Palestine, and peace.
The fallout of that traumatic loss inflaming hardliners on both sides of the conflict.
Rabin's assassination was a tremendous blow to the peace process.
Israel soon drifting rightward in the vacuum of a strong leader pushing for peace.
President John F. Kennedy, ground zero for the death of American optimism and conspiracy culture.
On November 22, 1963, President Kennedy and the First Lady arriving in Dallas on that day that would change America. That tragic trip through Dealey Plaza. The first couple riding through that windy road in Dallas in a Lincoln Continental.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Jesus Christ. Christianity is the world's largest religion, with around a third of the global population adhering to its basic tenets. The figure of Jesus Christ sits at the center of these tenets, a singular figure whose life, death, and prophesied resurrection serve as the foundation of the faith.
The most famous death in history is the death of Jesus of Nazareth. 2,000 years ago, in 1st century Jerusalem, he was crucified by the Romans.
The Christian Bible describes the life of Jesus for believers, while historical and archaeological evidence paints contextual pictures for those outside of its religious sphere of influence.
The crucifixion of Jesus came to have an immense political significance on a much grander scale, in that his followers founded a new religion.
It is fair to point out that religious cultures all over the world possess their own important mythologies. However, the sheer vastness of Jesus Christ's impact over the world continues to be felt long after the biblical accounts of his death.
What does this mean? That the one that we had all of these expectations about has been crucified. How do we deal with this? Not merely the end of this life, but the shameful end of this life.
What are your thoughts on some of these historical figures? Let us know in the comments.
I'll do nothing. They owe me their lives.
But the Republic.
I am the Republic.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.